Hello, my name is John Winters from Maths Masters, and what I'm going to do today is I'm going to look at one of the more problematic parts of paper one. It's called the chain rule, part of the differentiation section of the course. Now, year after year, it appears not just in one or two places, but in several places, and it can be actually on either exam. It's appeared on both in the past. So it's a very, very important concept. It's one of those things that's actually really, really easy to do, but it's also really easy to forget how to do it. The biggest problem with the chain rule is actually knowing when you should use it. And that's the first thing that I'm going to deal with, this key fact. If it isn't just X, then it is the chain rule. Now, if you remember that simple fact, you will never go wrong with this. So for example, imagine, say, if I was talking about sine X. Well, it is the sine of just X. So that is not the chain rule, okay? However, if I had the sine of 2x plus 1, now I would say, well, this is not just x, so therefore it is the sine rule, or sorry, the chain rule. So if the brackets that come after sine or cos or log or e, if they are not just x, then it is the chain rule. Okay, so that's a simple fact, okay? Now, we're just going to do some examples. And what I've done here is I've got an example from pretty much, I won't say all of the different functions you can be asked, but a lot of the core ones. So let's begin with this one. Now, first things first, I can see clearly that this is not just x. So not just x. That means that it is the chain rule, okay? Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to write down the function again. F of x is equal to the sine of 2x plus 5, okay? Now, when we're using the chain rule, what I'm going to ask you to do is to read your functions backwards. So instead of reading from left to right, like we do if we're reading a novel, I want you to read from right to left, okay? So imagine we're reading this way. Now, this is literally a foolproof method for doing the chain rule. As you read from right to left, each time you see a function, you list it. So we're going to make a list of our functions over here. The first thing I see here is a 2x plus 5, and I'm going to call that w, 2x plus 5. Now remember, we've called the brackets w, so the next thing I see is sine, but this is basically the sine of w, okay? Now, the chain rule is extremely simple. Okay, remember we knew we were to use it because it was not just x. How we use it is we make a list of the functions we see reading from right to left, and now this is the easy part. You differentiate each function one at a time, and you simply multiply the answers together. So f dash x is equal to, well, differentiate function number 1. If I differentiate 2x plus 5, I clearly get 2. Because if I differentiate 2x, I get 2, and 5 is constant, so I differentiate 5, I get 0. So that's that. Next up, if I differentiate sine, I get cos. So instead of sine of w, that's going to become cos of w. Okay? And now we're almost done. The only thing I need to do now is to get rid of this w. W was a letter that I introduced a couple of seconds ago just to make my life easier. But W is actually 2x plus 5. So now all I have to do is say f dash x equals 2 multiplied by the cos of 2x plus 5. And that's an extremely simple challenge. Okay, so you read your functions from right to left. You call the first function w. You differentiate each function one at a time, multiply your answers together, and then put back in for w, okay? So very, very straightforward question. Now, the next one, exponential questions have been asked almost every year, okay? I won't say every year, but almost every year. And again, I know this is the chain rule because that's not just e to the power of just x. It's e to the power of something different, okay? It's not e to the power of x, it's e to the power of minus 0.1x. So again, I'll briefly just rewrite the function. So g of x equals 45 multiplied by e to the power of minus 0.1x. Now, let's follow the rule. Okay, we know it's the chain rule because it's not just x. Now we write a list of our functions reading from right to left. Okay? Now, as I read from right to left, the first function that I see, which I'm going to call w, is minus 0.1 multiplied by x. Okay, it's not e to the power of x, it's e to the power of minus 0.1x. Now, the second function I see is e to the power of w. Okay, e to the power of w, e itself is a function. Now, 45, this is something really important. 45 is what I call a multiplied constant, okay? And multiplied constants survive the differentiation process. We don't need to do anything with the 45, we just leave it there at the start. So, g dash x, we're now ready to go. Remember the rule. You differentiate each of your functions one at a time, and then you multiply the answers together. So if I differentiate my first function, if I differentiate w, if I differentiate minus 0.1x, I get minus 0.1. Remember, if you differentiated 7x, you'd get 7. Sorry, minus 0.1. If you differentiated 7x, you'd get 7. If you differentiated 50x, you get 50. If you differentiate minus 0.1x, you get minus 0.1. And then the next thing, my apologies, the next thing that I need to do is differentiate e to the power of w. Now, e is a really, really special function. E is the only function that when you differentiate it, you get the same function back. So when I differentiate e to the power of w, I get e to the power of w. Now remember, you differentiate your functions one at a time, and then you multiply your answers together. And that's exactly what I've done here. Now, g dash x then, final line, is minus 0.1 multiplied by minus 0.1. And then all I'm going to do now is I'm going to replace w again with minus 0.1x. So that's e to the power of minus 0.1x. And we are done with that question. Okay? So again, you read your functions from right to left. You make a list of the functions that you see using the letter w. And then you differentiate each part of the function one at a time and just multiply the answers together. That's how easy the chain rule is. Now, in our next example, we have a log. Okay, and again, logs appear on almost every Leaving Cert exam. So I'm going to begin by just writing down p of x equals the natural log of 4x squared plus 1. Now, again, to begin with, I say to myself, well, this is definitely not just x. It's not the log of x, it's the log of 4x squared plus 1. Okay, so this is definitely the chain rule. If it isn't just x, then it is the chain rule. Okay, now over here on the right hand side, I'm going to make a list of my functions. Now, as I read from right to left, the two functions that I see are function number 1, 4x squared plus 1, and then function number 2 is my natural log function. Okay, now remember the rule. Differentiate each of your functions one at a time and multiply your answers together. So p dash x equals, and sorry, slight oversight here. This is what I call w, and then this is the log of w. Now, p dash x is going to be, if I differentiate the first function, if I differentiate 4x squared plus 1, I get 8x. Okay? And then if I differentiate log w, I get 1 over w. Remember, in the log tables, if we look it up, when you differentiate log x, you get 1 over x. So when you differentiate log w, you get 1 over w. So p dash x is going to be 8x multiplied by 1 over 4x squared plus 1. Okay, multiplied by 1 over 4x squared plus 1. All I've done there is I've just replaced my w with 4x squared plus 1. That's all. So p dash x is finally equal to 8x over 4x squared plus 1. And we are done. Okay, now we would look briefly to see if we can cancel anything. I can see that 8 and 4 are divisible by 4, but 1 is not. So I can't cancel down. There's nothing I can do here to make this more straightforward. Okay. Now, our final question is this one. Q of x is equal to the cos of 1 over x. Find Q dash x. Now, again, we say to ourselves, well, this is not just x, it's 1 over x. It's not just x, it's 1 over x. So this is definitely the chain rule. So I begin by just writing down q of x equals the cos of 1 over x. Okay, so q of x is equal to cos of 1 over x. Now over here on the right-hand side, we're going to read our functions from right to left. First function we see is 1 over x, and we're going to call that w. So w is 1 over x. And then function number 2, the second one that we see, is cos. And that's going to be the cos of w, the cos of the thing that we've called w. Now, I'm looking at 1 over x, and I'm wondering about how to differentiate it. I could use the quotient rule, but it would be a severe overkill. It's much easier for me to differentiate this if I rewrite 1 over x as x to the power of 1. Because now I can just bring the power down in front and reduce the power by 1 when I do the differentiation. So here goes. So q dash x. Remember, you differentiate each of your two functions one at a time, and you multiply your answers together. So q dash x is going to be minus 1 multiplied by x to the power of minus 2. Okay, that's differentiating x to the power of minus 1. Bring the power down in front and reduce the power by 1. Then I multiply by what I get when I differentiate cos. Now, if I differentiate cos x, I get minus sine x. So if I differentiate cos w, I get minus the sine of w. And then the only thing I need to do at this stage is just tidy up and put back in for w. So q dash x is equal to, well, minus 1 multiplied by x to the power of minus 2 is the same as minus 1 over x squared. Remember, if you move a power up or down across the division line, you change the sign of that power. So that's minus 1 over x squared. And then multiplied by minus the sign of the thing that I called w, which was 1 over x. Okay, minus sine w. Now, minus by minus is plus. So my final answer is 1 over x squared multiplied by the sine of 1 over x. Now, guys, I hope you enjoyed this very, very short video. In this video, we covered, as I said, the main types of questions that you can be asked involving the chain rule. But the key thing here is, if it isn't just x, then it is the chain rule. So that's how you decide whether you have to use the chain rule or not. So listen, thanks very much for watching. If you want any further information about courses that we offer at Maths Masters, just go to mathsmasters.ie and you'll see a world of information about our Christmas courses and grinds. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.